There's a new kid on the block for the video game scene, and it's taken the world by storm. That's right, in this video, we are going to be taking a look at social games. And I know what you're thinking, isn't every game with a multiplayer mode, that technically counts as a social game? Not quite, get those games out of here. We're talking about a very specific type of social game. What type of social game? Well, it was the one that was really popularized at around the same time as that pandemic kind of happened, mostly because of, well, streamers.
I'm so sorry, Scissors! I'm so sorry! Hey! Let's go!
And it is really interesting to see how games like Among Us started to pop off during that whole pandemic period, because Among Us actually came out years beforehand, but it really allowed and paved the way for all of these different types of games like Phasmophobia, Lethal Company, and Content Warning to kind of come to the forefront of, honestly, a lot of people's radars. So the purpose of this video is we're going to be taking a look at Among Us, Lethal Company, Phasmophobia, and Content Warning to kind of see if we can piece together what makes a successful social game. And so before we get into all of that, I think it's kind of important to explain what the appeal of these social games really are. Basically, it's you and a bunch of friends who are participating in not really like a long form type of game, but it's like a solid quick session and then you do one round and you're pretty much done, but generally speaking, you've had a great time. But honestly, a lot of these social games actually borrow elements from card/board games like Coup, Avalon, Betrayal at House on the Hill. You're segmenting these individual rounds, you know, things can kind of happen, you're playing with your friends and it could go one way or it could go another way, you're not too sure what's gonna happen. And so that kind of was where the original fun was ported into the video game world. And obviously, video games, you can do a little bit more than just have like a card or a little board with tiles moving around and stuff like that. And so the video games have kind of taken those core elements and then boom, made them into this whole brand new thing, which once again is incredibly popular in 2024. And so let's talk about what makes a good social game in this day and age based off of those previous games that I've mentioned. The first thing I noticed across all those different games, well, always got a little bit of a horror backdrop setting here. I mean, Phasmophobia is the easiest example of this one. You're literally walking into haunted locations. But obviously Lethal Company, going into an abandoned factory. Content Warning, you're going into the old world with monsters. And even Among Us. Among Us, even though it looks cartoony, is really based off of John Carpenter's The Thing. I mean, the whole idea of imposter aliens walking among you, that's kind of a horror setting if you think about it. And the benefits of having that backdrop is that it creates this creepy atmosphere, giving to a lot of tension to the overall game. You could be in moments where absolutely nothing is happening, but then you could be in moments where chaos is going down and everyone's just running around freaked out. And it's this jump from 0 to 100 that can really happen at pretty much any point that kind of adds to that tension where, you know, you're not sure if everything is going to be fine or things are going to go south real fast. And at the same time, I mean, if you look at these games, even though it's in a horror setting, it's not like a hyper-realistic horror setting. It is a little bit more cartoony, a little bit more goofy. And I think that actually kind of helps because then it lowers the barrier of entry to this one. The fact that you're being able to play with your friends in kind of a horror setting, but it's not absolutely terrifying, is really good to encourage other people to play. And so that's likely to increase the player base and the popularity. Like I'm just saying, it's a lot easier to convince a friend to play Among Us with a group of friends rather than to like go into the Outlast trials or something like that and just like, hey, let's give this one a shot, why don't we? Okay, building off of the setting, point number 2 is all of these games do an excellent job of actually depriving your main senses in a video game. Now, the two senses that video games mostly work with are sound and sight. If you're tasting your video game, that's something else. I don't know what's going on there, but so focusing first on the audio portion of it, Lethal Company, Phasmophobia, as well as Content Warning all use proximity voice chat. Now, Phasmophobia was the one that kind of paved the way for the proximity voice chat, and the proximity voice chat actually works really well because as opposed to sitting in a Discord call with your buddies at all times so you can communicate and you know when someone is alive or someone has passed away or what is going on, well, you can't really tell with proximity voice chat because it's all in game. And also we're seeing these games start to use the voice chat against you where like if you're loud then the monster might hear you and things like that, so you want to hold in your voice. And really disrupting communications between everybody leads to more tension because you're not 100% sure of what the scenario is. And then of course Among Us, a little bit different, but you don't actually talk to any of the other players until you call a meeting because either someone is dead or someone hit an emergency meeting, leading to a lot of confusion. Not everyone is sure what is happening all of the time. And to further that point, your vision is extremely limited in Among Us, with the little circle around you, and you can adjust it in the settings, obviously. But the idea is that you're not too sure what's happening around the map, around you even. Someone could be dying over there, and you've got no idea because you're hanging out over here and your little cone doesn't cover it. And with the other games too, they limit your vision usually with like brightness, darkness, or having very sharp corners and lots of obstacles in the way, so you're not sure what's going on all the time. It's a common thing where, you know, you'll be hanging out with your buddies and then you'll see something move into the distance and be like, everybody chill. And everyone freezes and you're just waiting to see what's just on the other side of that box that you just walked past. The whole idea is, once again, to deprive you of information to really understand what is going on. It's taking away your ability to get the full picture of the situation, leading to a little bit more horror. I mean, outside of these social games, horror games use these elements all the time. Obviously, this horror backdrop makes a lot of sense, but depriving you of audio or visual cues is so important in building up tension and getting you with jump scares. And that leads into actually point number 3, which is reactable moments. You know, I've just spent a lot of time talking about a horror backdrop, and then on top of that too, depriving you of all of your senses. But at the same time, you know, when the thing actually hops out at you and people scream and people panic and people run, it's inherently funny. It's those jump scare moments or those moments of panic that honestly are getting the most number of views. And so a game that really encourages you to be able to have that experience with people is obviously going to explode. And given the fact that it is with other players as well, so then they get to experience the exact same thing and you get to see their reactions in addition to your own, it is the winning formula right now for making something go viral in the gaming space in modern media. Now, obviously, it is a little bit different because Among Us is more someone gets you, and it leads to those moments where it's like, how could I have been betrayed? This is insanity. But the other games, it's a little bit more on the nose because, well, there's giant randomization monsters that could be coming out of nowhere. You don't know what's going to happen, and then boom, you're dead. I'm actually going to make the argument that I think these reactable moments are so important to blowing a game up in the first place. Even when you look back to the root of a lot of like horror YouTubers like PewDiePie, Jacksepticeye, Markiplier, they played games that were very focused on jump scares because you wanted to ride that level of tension, and then you see that moment where the payoff happens, the jump scare happens, and you get to see their reaction, and that was content for a long time. A long time. It still is very much content. But the benefit of having that social game, once again, is generally speaking, multiple people are going to be streaming their perspectives, so you can see all of the different ways that it broke down and all of the different people having their own unique reactions to these crazy scenarios that kind of pop up. But once you get past the jump scares, then we move on to point number 4, which is enabling good storytelling with your friends. But all these games need some sort of inherent silliness to the situation, where even if things aren't super reactable, players can make moments happen that are really funny. I think Phasmophobia is kind of like the obvious one where it's like, oh, you've locked your friend inside of the house and you can hear them screaming, asking for help and all that type of stuff, and they're having like a meltdown inside while you and your friends are in the van like, haha, that's funny. Honestly, that might be more of a reflection on humanity and society rather than the actual game, but I digress. But it's the fact that these games actually have room to do your own little types of storytelling inside of it and have these weird, funny moments that could just happen organically between friends in these weird scenarios. What the game does is it provides enough of a backdrop for these weird scenarios to kind of go in, and I think that actually the more recent iterations where we're seeing Lethal Company as well as Content Warning really do a great job by randomizing things so that you're not 100% sure what you're walking into. Ultimately, the reason why I think these games stick around beyond just like that haha super react funny, oh I want to watch this person play it, but I'm never gonna do it. What elevates it is the fact that it does allow for that organic storytelling between the players who are playing. The streamers obviously is an easy example of that because each streamer, you know their individual personality, so you know how they're going to react off of one another, but I think that it really boils down to how you play things with your friends as well. I think these games would easily fall off if the only fun thing about them was to watch someone else play them. But the reason why they thrive on is because, you know, you and your friends are in a way just kind of hanging out. You've got this loose common goal, whether or not it's to record ghosts or monsters or get scrap or figure out who the traitors are. You've got enough of a framework where you can hang out with your friends and go through these kind of silly situations together. And at the end of the day, I mean, I'm calling these games social games for a reason. It's because you get to build interactions amongst the other people that kind of exist, and people like to feel like they're a part of a group like that. And actually, I think the most recent game, Content Warning, does does a fantastic job with the fact that you do get that recordable video, because it's something that you get to take with you after the game actually is over. And in today's day and age where everyone likes to keep everything, it's fun to have those moments put together, even if they are a little bit chaotic, even if they are a little bit orchestrated. It's something that you can share with your friends, and then you share with other friends and try to convince them to buy the game, which then they buy into it. I'm just saying these social games have pretty much the perfect business plan. That breaks it down. Once again, just to recap, it's got to have a horror setting, it's got to deprive your senses like most good horror games, it's got to have those juicy streamer reactable moments, and of course it really has to have an emphasis on good storytelling with friends. If you throw all those elements together and then spit out a game, I think, you know, you might have the next hit in social games. And also too, I really do want to give a shout out to Content Warning, even though I would argue that it is probably the weakest out of the four there, just with the amount of stuff that is currently available. The fact that they gave it away for free for like 2 days, and on top of that too, like I said, they have a built-in video thing system into it, it allowed the game to explode so much. So, you know, any indie devs out there, I'm just saying, that might be a viable strategy to kind of make your game go a little bit viral. And so that is going to wrap up this video. Let me know what your favorite social game is, or if you call this genre of game something different as well, because I'm calling it social games, but technically, like, you could throw Jackbox in that category, and I don't really consider that in the category that I'm talking about here. But anyways, hope you found this video a little bit informative, made you think about things just a little bit more as to what is really getting your attention when it comes down to video games, but would love to hear your opinions down below. Make sure to like and subscribe as I continue to work on these fun little explanatory videos, and we'll catch you in the next one. Bye everyone.